Hey everybody, this is Ceylon George from spirituallivingforbusypeople.com, and I wanted to share my thoughts about recent events in our country, in the United States, but also I think what's happened has reverberated around the world, and it's been hard the last couple of weeks as things have been unfolding, but there's also been great signs of hope. Of course, we know that weeks ago the world witnessed the death of George Floyd. And before that, the deaths of other African Americans. And as we know, that this has been going on for generations and generations. The difference now is that these crimes are being captured on video in broad daylight. So my heart certainly has ached the last couple of weeks, but really this journey for me, and all I can do is share my own perspective, my own personal journey. The purpose here isn't to get into any arguments about any specific issues, even though I may mention some of that. And we know that these are all emotional, hot button issues, and there's no way that anyone can say anything that is perfect or that everyone resonates with. But my hope is that we can all have an open heart to each other as we are really being forced to address and confront the issue of racism. And if there's any thing that maybe you can take away from this, and at least what I have seen in my living here for 20 years, is that unless we confront this will just keep reappearing over and over and over again without any signs of progress. It will just look like, Groundhog Day, but in the worst way. These scenes will just replay over and over again. There will be no ending to it. And the trauma is not just for people in the African American community, not just for the Black community. The trauma that we are seeing affects all people. It doesn't matter what color of skin you have. If you're a human being witnessing the death of people, even if maybe you think it doesn't affect you, there is something that happens to the collective psyche when we witness things like that, when we feel helpless, when we feel like there is nothing we can do to stop these, the ways that we may rationalize to come to terms with it. These are all things that we must confront in order to find some sense of healing and integration and wholeness. We have to accept all of it. So in my own journey coming to the United States 20 years ago, and having to navigate race in a way that I hadn't previously, the journey that I have walked has been one of denial. Many of the years that I've lived here, denial of systemic racism, denial of the pain of African Americans, and a willingness to accept narratives and stories that blames African Americans for their plight. And I don't, and again, just speaking for myself and sharing my story, I didn't intentionally do that. I didn't say I'm gonna, become a racist, or I'm gonna have these views, or I'm gonna treat African Americans in a certain way. I didn't identify myself as African American. And that was one way of me distancing myself. I was from the Caribbean, so I was living here, but I'm Black, obviously, but I'm not African American. I don't have the experience of African Americans. I have a very different experience coming from where I came from. Certainly, we deal with we have racism all over the world. This is not something that's unique to the United States, but it certainly has a different flavor, at least where I came from, than the United States. But I didn't intentionally do that. I think these were mindsets that I took on as a way of protecting my own psyche. It was just unbearable to think that maybe I could be one of those people, that I myself can be targeted just based on the color of my skin and for no other reason. That if I did the right things, if I said the right things, if I presented myself in the right way, that maybe I could be seen in a different way and not be seen as one of those people. I have to tell you, just saying this out loud makes me feel sick to my stomach. And over the years, it's taken me many years to really realize how I myself have bought into these stories that, that really denies the history. And so it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back over and over and over. And when we decide to wake up as a society, as a culture, as individuals, and face this, that is when we will begin to wake up from this nightmare that continues to happen over and over again. So I think what I would like to share here are just some thoughts around what I think are the ways that we can navigate this time. If you go on social media, if you go to the news sites, if you look at commentary, there's so many voices out there. We know that there are many protests, and we know that there's so much fighting for justice, which we all have to decide how we will partake of that. But I think those are powerful voices that are obviously making real change, and we're starting to see that. And so the hope is that those changes really take root and blossom into something that is not just good for African Americans, but will be good for all people, When African Americans thrive, the United States will thrive. So this is not just for African Americans. We are bringing wholeness to the whole nation, everyone. So all races. We're not just doing this for African Americans. We need all races, all creeds, all nationalities to join in this effort to rehumanize segments of our population that have been systematically dehumanized. And when we play with this fire, we all get burned. When we dehumanize fellow human beings, there is a price to pay on a societal level for that. It is such an egregious sin that when we hurl that evil at others, it comes back to us, and there is no escaping that. So that's why we need to reckon with this, and we need to search our hearts. I said, I didn't identify myself as an African American, and that's how I sought to survive. And you may have your own strategies that you have used to survive the reality of this. It's too awful and difficult to just face head on, but we're being forced to right now. And now I have had to reclaim and realize that I am African American. I became a citizen of the United States just over a year ago. And that decision was one that was very, very hard and took a very long time for me to come to that place. I've been living in the United States for almost 20 years as a permanent resident, and really resisted the thought of becoming a citizen because it meant becoming the citizen of a nation that in its history, in its current time, and on a societal level, does not accept the humanity of people who look like me. Again, that does not mean that I've met so many individuals of many races who I feel accept me. But when we look out at what's happening, it's very difficult to become the citizen of a nation where people who look like me feel excluded, feel marginalized, and feel targeted, and fear for their lives. So I've had to reckon with that. That was a big part of what I have had to reckon with. That I am now an African American. And so as becoming a citizen, I have had to embrace all of what it means to live in the United States. That I can't just accept the benefits without also taking on the burdens of living in this country. And so I have done that. That was a big part of what I have consciously decided when I decided to become a citizen. It was not just to enjoy all the benefits of citizenship. It was really a weighty, taking on the weight now fully that I am truly African American. And so I need to see the world through that lens as well, as painful as it might be, and to reckon with everything that comes up within me due to that. So I just want to share a few thoughts. So there are so many voices out there, so many opinions, so many arguments and fights and back and forth about how, us telling each other what to do or how to be. And I resisted creating this video for so long because I really don't want to be part of that. But what I want to do is to maybe just offer some things that we can reflect on and that may help you move through this time. And I think the one thing that I wanna share is that, and again, I'll just speak for myself, and hopefully if this resonates with you, then maybe it's something that you can take on. For me, I have been trying to focus on self-examination. So instead of looking and trying to see what others are doing, what they're doing right or wrong, really examining myself to see what is in my heart, what are the ways that I view and look at others in ways that may be dehumanizing, or ways that I have treated people, or ideas or thoughts that I've had, or my actions or inactions. What ways have I participated in being a solution to the problem? So rather than criticizing other people, demonizing other people, labeling other people, how can I confront my own demons, my own struggles around race, and how can I have meaningful, honest, heart-to-heart conversations with people and with myself, to truly begin to understand what this moment means and how I can, in my own life, make a difference. The second thing I would say is I need to educate myself. There are so many things I do not know about the history of African Americans in the United States, and I think many of us may shy away from that because there's so much pain in that history that it's very easy to overlook that. And of course, we know that in many of our official histories that many important parts of that history has been left out. So it's easy to just participate in that rather than facing this very difficult history. So I know there are many books on race written by African Americans, written by others that have taken over the bestseller lists on Amazon and other places. So I think it's a good sign that people are, it seems to me, wanting to educate themselves, and I want to also educate myself. Recognizing that that's not enough. It's a big part of it, but I need to educate myself. And the question I have to ask myself is, for what purpose am I educating myself? What actions am I going to take as a result of that education? What mindsets am I going to challenge because of that education? What commitments am I going to make because of that education? So this really has to be an education that is living, breathing, and our intention would be to apply that education. And again, speaking for myself, that is the goal that I have as I seek to educate myself better and educate my children, my family about, what it means to be a black person, a black or brown person in the United States, what the history has been, what opportunities we have now in this time to move forward and to love and to really bring love to the surface as a powerful force for healing in this time. The last thing I think of when I think about educating myself is that I really need to be willing to face the ugly truth. And facing the truth, so when I do that first step of self-examination, I need to be willing to face the truth of what I find. When I educate myself by going out there and reading and looking at what the history has been from, reputable sources, then I need to be willing to confront that truth as well. So I need to be willing to confront the truth. I say the ugly truth, but it's just truth, right? Truth is truth. So I need to be willing to confront the truth within me as I, explore and examine my own life, but also the truth of how the world has been and how this has unfolded over many hundreds of years. And in facing that truth, how can I be finally set free from the false ideas, from the false notions, and then give me the freedom to finally act out of a place of strength. I know what the history is. I know what's in my heart. I can choose to make different choices. I can make different choices, and I can live from a place of empowerment rather than disempowerment, denial, fear. All right. So this is not a time to be afraid. This is a time for me to step up, to step forward, to lend my voice, to lend whatever it is that I have to share at risk of knowing that the message will not be accepted by all. And that's true of everything. But we must still be willing to stand up and let our voices be heard, so that let our voices be heard in the service of love and in the service of healing. And so that is my only intention here. So I hope you find some value in this. I hope it sparks questions and maybe a conversation. I always love to hear from people in my audience. So if this sparks a question, a concern, a thought, a reflection, I'd love to hear it. So you can email me at Cylon, Cylon, at spirituallivingforbusypeople.com. How are you navigating this time? What things have come up for you? Have you been able to confront any denial? What is that like for you? So thank you so much for who you are. Thank you so much for showing up. And I pray, as always, as we know we're still going through this pandemic, even though it looks like things are getting normal. So as always, I pray for your safety, the safety for yourself and your family. And may we move from strength to strength in this time. I still believe in humanity. I believe in the power of love. I believe in the power of the human spirit. So onward we go in love for all of our fellow human beings. Thank you.